Thank you. So this is a busy season for us at Gleeners, and I would tell you I'm going to depend on the notes a little more than I would. My wife would say that if I didn't, I would ramble, and you would get a longer version. So I'm not even going to do a survey and assume that you'll give me that latitude. So, well, I was asked to focus on the theme of count the cost this morning, and the Gospel of Matthew in particular, but actually I think that's a theme that we see throughout the Scripture. You know, that reference of cost of action, or in some cases inaction, is throughout Proverbs and Luke and Mark and John and Peter and probably elsewhere that I didn't find. So my point is, clearly that message is one that God wants us to hear. But I'll start with Deuteronomy 8 and read a passage for you. He humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. I guess my point from that, too, is that we never know when we will be the donor of food or when we will be the one in line. And I can tell you that more people than you might realize in life experience both situations. Some of you probably know the origin of Gleeners, but I thought I would share that as well. It comes out of the Gospel of Ruth, and there was a formal custom of allowing the poor or others to follow along in the harvest and reap a share, specifically the share that fell on the ground. So not the way we run the modern Gleeners. We're not following farmers through the field and picking up the discards. It's a little more structured than that. I thought I would also share with you a little bit about the scope and the scale of hunger in Indiana. But as I do that, I would encourage you to think about hunger as a symptom of something else, and realize that people face more than one challenge. There's no one we interact with that is dealing only with hunger. It's intertwined with other challenges, including unemployment, or these days even more a pattern of underemployment, housing, mental health, physical health. Hunger exacerbates other challenges, though. If you're dealing with hunger, that's going to spill over into academic performance. Frankly, it circles back around to health issues and things as well. The other point that if you're not experiencing that, you may not realize, is finding food is just one factor in a very complicated and challenging daily reality. You know, for us to run to the food store and back and be home in 30 minutes, it doesn't work that way for those that have to seek food elsewhere. The total number of food insecure Hoosiers remains unchanged since 2008 in that recession. My point is, the economy has not improved for everyone, and hunger is a health issue directly linked to nutrition. 34% of those we serve also have diabetes. There's a connection between accepting food chosen or given to you by others and being able to do your own shopping. Now, those of us who do our own shopping may be inclined to diabetes or something too, I don't know. But so hunger negatively impacts academic performance, worker productivity, a range of social issues, including crime. Direct connection to that. We actually work with IMPD in Indianapolis and have data to back that up. So I would invite you to count the cost to our community and our own faith journeys of not taking up the cross and following God as He cares for others. I'll give you a little background on the population we serve at Gleeners, and I would say the percentage may vary, but it's very typical across the country in these numbers. 49% are children or senior citizens that shouldn't find themselves in that situation in life. 64% have at least one unemployed adult in the household. And I would say 64 seems high, but there are people with a misunderstanding out there that would think it's 100%. It's not the case. 17% are veterans or, unfortunately, even active duty military. 70% live under the poverty level, and 53% in deep poverty, which means they have $10,000 or less in resources a year. 29% include grandparents who are raising their own grandchildren and are responsible for feeding them. 81% choose between paying for food and transportation. 78% between food and medicine. 77% between food and utilities. And 65% face a choice between food or a place to live. So it's easy in this, I would say, somewhat self-absorbed 21st century world to become skeptical and even in some cases judgmental about those in need. But I can assure you, if you saw the faces of hunger that I see every day, you wouldn't be skeptical or judgmental. You would have an urgent, heartfelt need to act. In Luke 6, Jesus said to the disciples, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. And blessed are you who hunger now, for you will be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh." So I would say we should take a moment and reflect on our own hurried lives and what leads us to some of these behaviors of impatience or worry or self-focus, and instead put yourself in the shoes of those people I just described, those people who are making difficult choices in life. And then, presuming that self-reflection leads you to a desire to do something about it, there are plenty of options in social service needs or poverty. A little bit about Hamilton County, because there are assumptions, and there's a data sheet in front of you too. People make assumptions that we are a county of affluence. That's true, but not true for all. And a 5% poverty rate is low in terms of national statistics, but when you factor the population in Hamilton County, that makes us the county with the second highest poverty population in the state. So, a reflection of the population, not the percent. So what that means for Gleeners is we bring 1 million meals to this county every year, just short of it. Backsacks in 14 elementaries, school-based pantries in 2 locations, summer meal sites right here in Noblesville as well as Clarksville, mobile pantry locations where we actually have a vehicle we can load with food and we bring in, and then we support food or provide food to 10 pantries in this county, a couple here in this town. And that's only our role. That's not the complete hunger picture. People maybe don't understand what Gleeners is. Think of us as a large distribution center first, but founded in 1980, one of 199 food banks that are assembled together under the umbrella of Feeding America. I operate out of a 300,000 square foot state-of-the-art distribution center, one that would be recognized by my former colleagues at Kroger as a legitimate distribution center. We support a 21 county region, which is reflected on the map that you see, including some of the high population and high poverty counties in Indiana. An average poverty rate across that service area of 13%, which, because of the population in those counties, even though it's not a third of the 92 counties, we cover about a third of the hungry in the state. That translates in meals for my team to providing about 21 million meals a year. So a bit of a daunting task, but I would say we should count the cost of not providing those meals. So Gleeners has a variety of programs and ways that we deliver. There are 236 traditional food pantries that I'm sure at least some of you have volunteered in or seen or perhaps been in line and visited as well. 38 mobile pantries helps us reach 16,000 additional families a month out in sometimes remote locations or high priority neighborhoods. A nice and recent trend, as we've seen schools begin to open their doors again, unlock them, allow schools to evolve back into those neighborhood resources they were when I was a kid, is we've been able to go into those schools and set up, it says 53 in my notes, I realize I'm out of date, 54 school-based pantries. And with those, we can feed the whole family that's hungry, not just the kid who happens to go to that school. So a nice trend, and we can do it at a lower per meal cost. Backsacks, many of you may have heard about or even volunteered to help assemble. We reach 9,400 students every Friday at 245 school sites with those. To meet our current level of operations, my team and I need to raise $8 million a year. That said, Gleeners is highly efficient. About 96% of those funds raised go toward the food cost. So now the budget's $60 million a year. The biggest share of what we need to do is raise $45 million in food donations. And a share of that actually happens here. I think it goes direct to Fishers United Methodist, which is one of our affiliated pantries. But again, what's the cost? How do we count the cost of not having that $45 million in donated food? Every day, every time I sign a check, every time I sign an invoice, I convert in my head, every dollar we spend is 3 meals I can't provide. So there's a very realistic conversion every day. We're also critically dependent on more than 20,000 donors every year and more than 32,000 volunteers every year. And those volunteers contribute more than 100,000 hours of volunteer time to us each year. Now that translation back to that, that's 50 full-time employees I don't have to pay for, excuse me, because of those volunteers. Thankfully, our own denomination sets an example as well. Just a few weeks ago, the Bishop, Julius Trimble, was in Gleeners with his entire leadership team, including our district superintendent. Michelle was there, I can vouch for it. And they packed backsacks, those backsacks that go to schools on Friday. The piece of the hunger relief system that people may not realize or be focused on, and I saw Don's here. Where's Don Gustafson? Can you do some math for me? So, I presume yes. No, you can do this in your head, Don. Federal programs, SNAP, which used to be called food stamps, that's 67% of the total meals available to those that are hungry in this country. The WIC program's another 7, TFAP's another 2, and the school lunch program, which is increasing, and breakfast too, is another 15. So federal sources are what percent of the total food for the hungry? Yes, 91%. So that means all that huge effort and scale that Gleeners does as one food bank or one player in the charity side, we're 4% of the total in this area. Midwest Food Bank, an independent, is 2. And then there are a whole series of other players like Second Helpings, Meals on Wheels, Central Indiana Council on Aging, all less than 1%. So not a part of the job that I thought I would want to do, but keeping track of the legislation and where that goes. When the federal government makes a decision in the Farm Bill or something else to cut SNAP benefits, there's a direct and immediate translation for us. They're going to be in our line, or they're going to be in a pantry line instead. So flow back and forth, and in many ways it's a multiplier. We're really heavily dependent on corporate philanthropy, so maybe some of your own employers are contributing to us as well, but they're certainly leaders in that field. Companies like Eli Lilly and Kroger and Walmart and Kraft and Dow AgroSciences. We've grown a lot since 2010 as a food bank and as a network. We increased food distribution in the last few years by 88%. We doubled our fleet of refrigerated trucks, now 12 refrigerated trucks, a couple semis, several mobile pantries, literally operating a fleet. We have quadrupled our fresh produce distribution. Maybe we need to come up to Teeter Farm and see if we can quintuple it. I don't know, but I also would say the scale and the size of the building and the size of the fleet, I describe to visitors to Gleeners as our unfortunate reality. I'm not really proud of that fact or those numbers. Why should we be? And why should we need this 300,000 square foot facility? And why should we need to distribute more than 20 million meals just as one player in the system? So we've got some work to do, I would say, on the social service side and on the community service side, and we've got more work to do in taking care of our neighbors who are hungry. And we won't solve it by solving hunger, as I indicated earlier, because it's so interrelated. So one of the things we're doing about it actually is both an exciting and somewhat a frightening opportunity, I guess I would say. The Feeding America Network I talked about is setting up 8 produce mixing centers or co-ops around the United States. One of those will be housed at Gleeners. So our work as a team is about to double. And that So we'll buy produce by the truckload that'll come in the west side of the building, and then we'll mix those loads and send them out to 40 food banks around 8 Midwest states in full truckload quantities of mixed produce. But also, Gleeners will be one of the 40 customers of the co-op that we run. So now I've got to go out and get additional resources and all so that we can introduce this produce. But think about the impact. That's an impact not just on hunger, but quality of food. It'll have a nutritional impact. We already have decided to do some prioritization. So for example, those school-based pantries will get as much produce as we can send out quicker, and we can start impacting not just hunger, but the academic performance of those kids as well. So it's bringing a lot of work. It's bringing fundraising expectations. It's complicating the way we have to operate. And we're going to have to find some new friends and new partners. We are already working with logistics or supply chain companies. We're going to start reaching out to every farmer we can find and so on. So a big opportunity that will disproportionately benefit those who are hungry in our area, but now we have some responsibility for 8 states worth of hungry in a way. Hopefully, you're arriving at the question of how can you make a difference for your hungry Hoosier neighbors? And I would say, obviously, donate time, food, funds to not just Gleeners, I would hope that's in the mix, but a local hunger relief agency. There's plenty to do in your own neighborhood and more to do than you may realize. Or support a food drive. Those happen right here in this host church several times a year. Or work with us or someone else to drive those nice trends and support those opportunities like the school-based pantries or the mobile pantries. Both offer volunteer opportunities and need skills and talents. Or volunteer here on a Thursday evening for Dinner on Us, where prepared meals are distributed, because prepared meals are part of the solution as well. Or volunteer at Teeter Organic Farm starting now, today, right? But the other thing you can do, particularly along the lines of the federal and the state government issues I was talking about, is advocate and speak up about your expectations of what we do together to take care of those who depend on us. And not just hunger, but related poverty issues. So I'll leave you with a closing thought from Deuteronomy. Give generously to the poor and do so without a grudging heart. Then because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore I command you to be open-handed towards your fellow Israelites who are poor and needy in your land. So rather than focusing on counting the cost, the theme I was given this morning, I would propose that we resolve together to focus instead on ending suffering and ending hunger, and then we can count the impact. Thank you. So I'd happily take some questions. Obviously, if I tried to cover every topic related to Gleeners, we'd be here this afternoon and then have to bring in lunch. But so I'll leave the rest of the themes to you. Yeah. It is. We're part of that process. But your question, if you don't mind, I'm going to expand because it gives me an opportunity. We are all in this together, not just those of us in the room, but those of us in the hunger relief space. And there are several collaborations that come together to work together. One of those, which has really grown into a best-in-class example across the country, and we're hearing from other cities about it, is called Indie Hunger Network. And that network includes not just us, but Midwest Food Bank and Second Helping, Secoa, 211, Meals on Wheels, several companies like Dow AgroSciences. We've all come together to help each other solve this problem. And that has led to a series of things that we knew we might see as opportunities, but we have never been able to tackle on our own. So the idea of working directly with the Indiana Truckers Association came from John Whitaker at Midwest Food Bank, and we have helped him build that up. So there are, in some places, there actually is enough food but it's an issue of getting the food to the people where they need it and when they need it, and frankly, eliminating waste that's in the system. Now, retailers like my former employer, Kroger and Walmart and Meijer and all those, have gotten better and better about donating food into the system. But one of the glaring places of waste was truckloads of particularly perishable food that would come in, and they're rejected by the retail customer for one reason or another. You can have a few blemishes on tomatoes, and a 53-foot load of tomatoes gets turned away and thrown away. There are actually loads that farmers don't harvest and plow back under because there's not a customer to send it to, or there's not transportation to get it from the farm or distribution center to the hunger relief system. So that partnership that you referred to with the State Truckers Association, they are committing to help us move food when we need to. They're also committing to, when they realize they have a load that they in the past would have dumped, they have an app on their smartphones now, and they have access to a site on their laptops in their trucks or through dispatch. There's several ways they can get the information, and they can quickly figure out the closest food bank or sophisticated food pantry they can take that load to. So that, as we get that built up and we figure out what works and doesn't, it's a pilot or a test right now, but I expect it to scale up. Think about the difference that entire truckloads at a time of perishable food will do for the system. So yeah, good question. I know some of you in this room, and I know you're not shy. I'll tell you what I do at staff meetings, by the way. When nobody has questions, I ask them. No, I won't do that to you guys. Yeah. Well, we have about 70, and it fluctuates plus or minus because we bring drivers in. We need CDL licensed drivers, by the way. We bring drivers in on contract for a probationary period. So the ratio of how many are staff and contract, but roughly 70. And then, as I said earlier, there are 50 full-time equivalents in the volunteer pool. So we might need Don to do the fraction or percent for me. Yeah, there we go. Wow. Rounding math. That's not you. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say all of that you're reading is speculation right now, in terms of what will happen with the budget and what will happen, because it'll come down to not just what the agency or department level numbers are, the federal government, but their subsequent steps. So a lot of what we see is block grants to states. So in Indiana, the SNAP dollars come in a block to Indiana, and the state FSSA decides how they distribute it, what are the standards to qualify, and so on. So it takes some time for those changes to ripple through. We're out ahead. I've got Senator Donnelly and Senator Young's numbers on speed dial, and if we get a sense of realistic change in the wrong direction, we will mobilize. We do it, but it's really speculation at this point. And another key thing is I don't know if you realize or not, but some legislation is reviewed on a schedule, not every year. So the Farm Bill, which includes a lot of subsidies, not just to farmers, but to the hunger relief system, is up for a total review. So we're particularly watching what happens with the Farm Bill. So, because frankly, we can't, if you take that 91% of resources that comes through federal programs, many times down to the state as an interim step and on, what if you take 10% out of that and just don't do it? Well, everything Gleeners does is only 4% now. We couldn't possibly take on 2.5 times more than what we're doing already. So there is not capacity to absorb. you know, if there's a significant percentage change in the government resources out there. You know, I'm pretty conservative by nature. I don't like writing checks every April and so on, but I see the impact in this instance of what those resources do. Yeah. Well, I don't know. You know, we talk as organizations, hunger organizations, and otherwise, and you know, there've been times when the mission statement is, "We will end hunger by 2010," or what. You know, it. Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, in many cases, you're holding the current line and not trying to move backwards on some of it. Don't mean to sound discouraging, but I think really the solution is in um, accepting the interconnected relationships that I was talking about earlier, that people are not dealing with hunger in isolation. So we can't try to deal with hunger alone with no awareness of the housing and employment and the other things. And frankly, mental health issues and other it's all connected. So the answer ultimately is wrapping around a family that's struggling and helping them deal with all of it. And then there's frankly a generational investment too. If we can invest in the current generation of kids and they grow up with the educational achievement, you know, on the right career path, you know, if we really are investing in the next generation and solutions, I think. But you know, my former employer Kroger has, you know, was dealing with hunger from horse-drawn wagon days, literally. I've seen old photos of food going up and down the Ohio River, horse-drawn wagons. So it's not a new challenge. So, but maybe more creative people than I am can come up with the answer. But it's not an easy one, or it would have been done. Okay, I'll be around for a bit as well. And I think Mike, I have a few of my cards up here as well, if anybody would like one of those. And there should be Gleeners info on the one pagers too. Thank you.